comment. Hey, I think that means we're live. Hey, good morning, all. Welcome to Talking Niagara this morning. Hey, Dave, did you get your kind of newsletter from Wayne Gates?
No, I haven't got it yet.
You haven't got it yet? I always find these interesting. Irrespective of the color of the party of the MP, the MPP, etc. I applaud this. It's an important piece of literature that they all should send out. And Wayne starts it off with, despite a rocky year, I continue to be amazed by the care and love displayed by the residents of Niagara Falls and Chippewa. That's because when times get tough, we turn towards each other. Interesting thought to open, right? And then he's got an amalgamation survey. So if you want to take part in the survey, it's in the info's in there. And who do I, he's got a nice, interesting section at the back called Who Do I Talk To? And which is information that almost every MPP or every politician needs to actually do. So what is your federal government responsible for? What's the provincial government responsible for? What's the Niagara region responsible for? And what's the city of Niagara Falls responsible for? There you go. Useful information. A lot of people just throw them in the bin, irrespective of the political leadership. All right.
Yes. Well, I've I was just saw something on the Facebook there just before, as I was opening up the show, right?
Yeah.
And it says there's a post there that Charlie Kirk and a fellow by the name of Bill Montgomery, who was a conservative activist,
yep,
started Turning Point in 2012. And two of the things they actively campaigned for basically was less COVID restrictions, much less COVID restrictions. That was Bill Montgomery's thing. And Charlie Kirk's thing was, even though we'll have a few innocents killed with guns, it's still better to have guns than not have guns in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And the irony of this is that Charlie Kirk got killed by a guy with a gun, and Bill Montgomery died of COVID. And I just looked it up, and it confirmed it. So there you have the ironies that the Turning Point was used as a pedestal, basically, to play down COVID-19, and Bill Montgomery was mostly involved in that, and he died of COVID-19. And Charlie Kirk, his thing was guns are a necessary evil, and that necessary evil killed him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, interesting. Okay. All right. Okay, Canada is providing an additional $120 million on humanitarian aid, humanitarian and development aid for Sudan. I know there's a lot of people who will basically say, we're wasting this money. We shouldn't be spending this kind of money abroad. I'm not so sure. Now, Sudan's got its problems, and they're looking at $90 million of humanitarian aid for food and nutrition, $18 million for protection of education programs, and $7 million for sexual and gender-based violence prevention. That's one area that, I understand why people want to contribute in that area, but I'm not so sure I'm not so sure that we got anything but wasted money in that area. But peace and stabilization efforts, that's something I think should be applauded, right?
Well, it's going to be hard.
It is.
Because, look, the money can come in and it can become good for kids and all that, and it may be able to be used in and around Khartoum, which is relatively untouched by the war that's going on there, the civil war.
Yeah.
But once you get over into that Darfur area, and you have the RSF forces, who are the Rapid Response Forces, is just the Jamjouid renamed. It is the Jamjouid renamed, which is an ultra-violent, ethnic cleansing organization.
And that's where this
and you got to tell I got to tell you this, that it is Sunni Muslim versus Sunni Muslim.
Yeah, but that's where this money needs to be spent, right? But that's where the money's probably not going to be spent.
Well, you do have a government there, and the government is trying to fight, kind of trying to find its way in this civil war. It doesn't know what to do with the RSF. It doesn't know what to do with its own troops. The outrages and Holocaustic-like type murders and massacres. I mean, the RSF surrounded the town and was going to eliminate it off the face of the earth. Maybe that's where Dr. Donald Jesus Trump got his idea to annihilate Iran. But that's what we're going to surround a whole town and annihilate it. And they did, and they started to do that. We have no idea of the atrocities that are happening in Sudan. It is one of the most ignored places on earth, but I think partly because it is so difficult to keep noticing Sudan when it just seems to be one of those intangible places that will not find peace. Now, for anyone who is quickly doesn't know much about Sudan. Sudan was the biggest country in Africa until like some decades ago, when it was split in half. The north of Sudan and the south of Sudan. Even though most of everybody is black there, they sort of think of themselves as Arabized in the north, and in the south, so a lot of them are not even Muslim. A lot of them are animists. They have a different religion altogether. So there's a split. So now there's North Sudan and South Sudan, or Sudan and South Sudan, two different countries. Within North Sudan, though, you have the Darfur areas, and you have what this thing is called the Jamjouid. Yeah. And it's a fight. It's a typical fight between herders and farmers. It's a fight between Arabized people and Africanized people, even though they share the same religion.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing about it is it's a desert country.
Well, yeah, it's quite barren, but the Nile goes right through it.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
So there's that, and as a matter of fact,
which is the lifeblood of the country, realistically, isn't it?
Well, yeah, the two branches of the Nile meet at Khartoum, which is the capital of Sudan.
Yeah. Yep.
And so the Blue Nile and the White Nile converge in that point.
But there's a lot of Canadians that say this is the type of spending that the Canadian government does that we should not be doing.
It depends. I am all for it. I am all for it.
Mike, for example, is saying, how many houses and hospitals does that build here? It's a fair question that Mike is raising, right?
True.
Enough, and he's also saying enough about worrying about foreign problems when our country is not doing well at all. And I understand again why Mike is saying exactly that, right?
Well, if we were given the money to Israel, I'd say no, turn it back. But this is essentially a problem that quite often is exacerbated by Western meddling in countries like that.
Yeah, but when I said at the outset, there will be people in Canada who will oppose this.
Yes, of course.
Right.
And I do not oppose it unless I don't know where that money's going. If they have solid, good agency on the ground that can distribute the food and the educational materials, this is good. And I would remind everyone here that it is in our interest to help rebuild countries so that we don't have continuous wars. When this war is ended, this country will be rebuilt, and I think we should view it something like the Marshall Plan, like the United States did after World War II. If they did not if they did not bring in the Marshall Plan to Europe and Japan have thrived super well because of the Marshall Plan. It's because the wealthy United States and other West, but mostly the United States, invested in those countries. We have to invest in those countries to hope that they we'll stop fighting, because eventually, because what it does is it costs us money. Every war on the planet costs us money. It raises the price of everything. So if you, I do agree. If the United States gives billions of dollars every year to Israel, and Canada, I think does too, we shouldn't give them a dime. A country like that.
But Mike is saying, if my country is doing well, I have no problem with helping others, but we're not doing well.
I see that, but that $120 million is not going to go and fix anything. You can count on that. You could think, what, $120 million? $120 million is not very much money.
Not in modern terms, no. No, that's for sure.
That's about,
not in
modern terms. About 250? Was that about 250 houses?
And you see,
the average house is $500,000, right?
Yeah.
Or about $500,000, right? The average house in Canada. So
to build a house
that represents 240 houses.
Yeah, but to build a house, not if you're actually talking about to build a brand new house, you're probably talking about the purchase of land, and the building all in is probably about 250 to 300,000, because obviously they're going to make a profit on that when they do
if
it.
you want to buy a house today, even a used house today, if you were to buy a house that's already built,
$500,000.
Okay, so you're looking at a minimum of $500,000.
Yeah, you are.
You would be lucky to get a house for $500,000. So when you look at $120 million, that represents 240 houses.
Yeah,
that's how little of money that is. It represents 240 houses.
Yeah, it's not a lot of money.
About that way, and 240 very modest houses.
Yeah,
in Niagara Falls.
And in fact, actually, I get it, but I also know that what Mike is going to say is that 240 houses is better than a big fat zero.
Maybe not, but that money would not have gone there anyway. If we really, seriously, if we wanted to help ourselves over.
Again, 94 million in humanitarian aid is not going to go. Food and nutrition is not going to go very far in Canada, but it's probably going to go quite a distance in Sudan.
Yeah. So I don't know who makes these decisions.
Yeah.
My biggest worry about this is, like, I look at it in a global way, and Rick says here that Carney is bankrupting us. In this particular case, you just stated the problem, Dave. Overpriced real estate. Yes, that's true. And the problem, however, as I see it in other terms, I see it as a means by which to save us money in the long run. Because if you start feeding and helping people, now it starts to reestablish the country. This war will end one day, and you don't want this country to be a sinkhole where terrorists and everybody else can go in and hang out and do their thing, like Osama bin Laden went to poverty-stricken Afghanistan and did his evil stuff there. And then what happens too is, in war zones like this, people begin to migrate, and they got to go someplace, and there are going to be huge amounts of people on the move. That's the risk we have with Iran right now. If they go in and do much more, if they start doing a boots on the ground war there, which looks like it's likely going to happen because of all the troops that are going there, that starts people moving and refugees running. And what happens is you get the spillover of refugees everywhere, and it just disrupts everything. So I would say our responsibility is maybe stop those refugees from moving from there, because they'll come to our country anyway. Refugees, there'll be refugees somewhere, and I don't know. On the face of it, looks like we're spending money for someone else.
That's a fair argument. It's a fair argument, and what Rick is saying, there's no return on our money. And what you're basically saying is, if we're stopping refugees from leaving Sudan, it's a good thing, whether they're coming to Canada or US or Europe or anywhere else. That's a good thing, right? Okay.
I believe there is a return on your money in the long run. When you make endeavors for peace, in the long run, peace costs us a lot less than war does. Even though this is not a direct expense from Canada, all the war that's happening there in Sudan is draining our resources some way or another.
Yeah.
It's disrupting trade. It's doing something. So it's indirect, but we are paying for it anyway.
Yeah.
And we are in interest for this not to spread, because if these things spread, then you're going to get even more refugees moving. You're going to get a situation that will cost us even more and disrupt even more trade networks. Right now in Africa, we want something calming down there. So because they have critical minerals, they've got all kinds of things we can use, and the continent is on the cusp of actually becoming a great success story. But I think it's up to us to help it along if we can. And $120 million is not a lot, but I don't know. We only gave $8 million to Cuba. I don't know where that's going to go. What's that going to buy? Buy how many loaves of bread? I don't know, but
yeah. All right, moving on. Moving on. So, food suppliers are adding surcharges to delivery, and because of the rising fuel costs, and of course, food prices are going to go up.
Yes, the short-term pain.
In fact, let's be honest, they've already gone up.
Oh yeah, I was in the grocery store the other day, and I was just like, "What the hell's going on here?"
Yeah,
looking at my grocery bill and thinking, "Holy smokes, it's about double what it was just a few years ago."
Yeah,
but the matter here is our short-term pain is going to be a really long short-term pain.
Yeah.
According to economists, that even if the Straits of Hormuz open up and the war concludes itself, the damage has been done, and it will take a long time for it to be able to right itself. I think it's
I think we could be talking
Goldberg or Bloom or whatever it is have pronounced that the economists there see higher costs in gas and food right up to 2029.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with that. I see it going on for the next 5 years at least. And of course, once a price level is reached and maintained for 5 years, it doesn't come down, does it?
Well, the thing is, say gas was $2.90 a gallon in the U.S. before Dr. Trump started his war, and now it's well over $4, kind of reaching $5. But when it comes down to $3.50, he's going to say, "See, it came down just like you said it would." Yeah, well, it's still 60 cents more than it was, before the war.
And again, the other thing is that here in Canada, we've had 2 spikes in price since 2019. This isn't the first time we've gone through this issue.
Well, the COVID was the last one.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
exactly. But this one, but once COVID was over and the supply chain started to open up again, things started coming down, and they were steadily coming down the whole time, and the economy was not doing too bad actually.
Yeah,
but as I've said before, when I was watching a Fox News business section, and they were talking about the 3 years of boom they had on them in the stock market, 3 years of bull markets. That meant 2 of them were in Biden's era, right? And of course, politically, they're saying everything was terrible during Biden's era, and it wasn't until Trump got in that the boom started. Well, there's Fox themselves who are obsequious to Trump, just stating the fact, you know.
Yeah, and basically, it's a worldwide thing. I've seen this for Europe. I've seen this for the US. I've seen this for Canada. And I even saw an Australian, talking about the rising price of food, all brought on
Yes.
because of the supply problems, right?
Well, it's going to happen, and of course that I don't know. They got to come up with some sort of short-term deal, where the Iranians are going to let the fertilizer go through, at least the fertilizer go through, some of the oil, any way to relieve the pressure. But the problem is you've got two vicious opponents. You got the Israel and Iran at each other, and neither one of them care about.
Rick is saying Rick is saying that the UK will be grounding planes in 5 weeks because of no jet fuel.
Yes, that's true. Thanks for that. Yeah, that's been reported. And Trump famously says, "Well, you want jet fuel? Come get it. I'll sell you some."
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's nice, and there has been a lot of ships turning and ending and pointing to the United States. There is going to be some extra that the United States has. I don't know how much more extra. They sell already. They sell just about everything else they make. They make a huge amount of money selling their oil. They buy our oil, as we've pointed this out a lot. They buy our oil because the refineries are good for heavy crude, but the sweet crude that they take from fracking, it would cost too much for them to make refineries for that. So what they do is they sell the sweet crude, which is high premium oil, for top dollar, and buy our crude oil for 20% discount. They're making money hand over fist.
Yeah. And as Gary's saying, raspberry jam at $9.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I mean, I even at a corner store, like I went to the corner store and I was looking, and I just I was I don't know what I was buying, but I noticed a pack of bologna there, bologna, and it was $9.99. Bologna, and I said, "That's bologna."
And Rick is saying, let's go to Costco.
Yeah, well, even a friend of mine goes to Costco steady, and he was just telling me yesterday he's noticed the sticker shock quite a bit lately. He's noticed he's a guy that really, really does do the budget thing. He's very, very good at it, and I think he knows every cent that goes out and comes in. He's just, one of those organized guys. And he told me just yesterday that he gets sticker shock every time he goes to Costco now.
Yep.
That's where he buys most of his stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So we've gotten through there. Okay. There's a Kitchener MPP is tabling renoviction protections for renters. And basically there's been Toronto and Hamilton have had the changes to bylaws that basically say if you want to renovate somebody, then you've got to actually apply for a permit from the city. But essentially, the landlord and tenant board says, "I don't care." Right? If the case comes to the board, it gets decided at the board. It doesn't matter whether you've got a permit or not. Right? The board's never going to care about that, and they're the only people who can decide whether an N13 is to be permitted or not.
Yeah, it seems to be a real struggle here. Of course, the N13 is the renovation thing. It's a hoax a lot of the times.
Not always, but I've got a couple of clients who basically, for example, there's a fire code in one house we're dealing with in Hamilton, where it's a duplex right now, and the fire department have basically said if you want a duplex, you've got to spend to actually do the fire separation in, because whoever did it didn't properly fire separate it. So the owner's basically saying, okay, I've got two 2-bedroom units. I'm evicting both sets of tenants because I have to reconvert this. So I've got two 2-bedroom units and I'm going to reconvert it to a 4-bedroom house.
Are they giving those people how long will it take? It should only take a few weeks, and then
you see, you're not offering. You're changing from a two bedroom units to 1 4-bedroom unit, right? You're not offering like for like. You do not have to, under the current rules, you do not have to offer them first choice of re-entry.
Okay, all right. So that's an exception. That is a fire rule. It is okay. That's not the ones I hear about mostly, though.
I know.
The ones I hear about mostly is a new landlord buys a building, and then he goes around and tells everybody they got to get out because he's going to do renovations, and they don't do much in any renovations. All they do is get rid of their tenant
and put a new one.
Put somebody in there with a paintbrush, and then charge everybody more. Particularly units that you are only allowed to raise the rent a certain amount every year, and if you can get them out of there, you can start your rent higher than they're paying now.
Yeah,
and that's usually the renovictions that we hear about. That is the abuse, and this is the article we're talking about. We're not talking about the renovictions that happen because of real reasons, like a fire reasons. We're talking about the phony renovictions.
Yeah, exactly. And there have been a number of them. We represent tenants who've been through a number of these, whereby what is happening, for example, is a tenant. There's been numerous examples of tenants where they've been kicked out. We had a tenant in Niagara Falls who was kicked out. The basically, well, and this one, the tenant was kicked out. The landlord was told by the new was selling the place and was told by the new owner, we're moving in. So he innocently gave them an N12 notice because the new owner was moving in. But the new owner basically, and both the tenants, both the tenants left. Again, another one of these splits. And when both the tenants left, they basically just jacked the rent up, put it straight back on the market. And I'm not talking, they left October. They left by October the 1st. I think would be the September 30th, right? And by October 20th, the new landlord's advertising both rental units for double the price.
Sure, those are the abuses we're talking about here, and this is what this Kitchener MPP was talking about.
Yeah,
they got to have a whole lot better scrutiny on these renovictions.
Yeah,
and the whole idea is that there's got to be they're getting away with too much of this.
Yeah,
the Landlord Tenant Act is all piled up. There's I mean, you're taking things to court, but there must be a backlog in court that goes from here to the sun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and also, but remember, with those particular tenants with a T5 application, I won those particular tenants about 10 and 12,000 each.
Good show. Right. But still, it's very disruptive for somebody who's living someplace, and then they have to leave, and then they're not going to be able to find it. There is a limited amount of housing out there.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, like we were thinking, like, I'll give you an example. We were thinking of buying a building. Kiwanis was thinking about buying a building and converting an existing apartment building and converting it to nonprofit.
Okay.
But we were in a meeting with the regional people at the time, and they said, no, you got to be careful. You got to be careful because that particular building already has low rent in it. So it services people who don't have a whole lot of money but can afford apartments and there. So if you buy that and convert it to nonprofit, what you're doing is you're eliminating the people at the low end that can afford it for people at the low end who can't afford it. You're not doing anybody any favor there. You either got to build a new one or find an apartment building that's for sale that won't affect the low end already. So, you see what I'm saying here? If you buy an apartment and people are paying low rent already, right? And then you say, okay, well, you got to go because we're doing a nonprofit. then they're stuck. They can't find another place.
I'm sorry, but I think that MPP is right. I think you could have found is wrong. That regional council is wrong. You could have found an accommodation, and an organization like yours could probably have figured that out, right? Because essentially,
there isn't enough out there. There's no.
I know that
there's just not enough. Nowhere
but the
near enough.
affordable units, you wouldn't be turning
I was in one yesterday visiting a friend of mine. And there's just not enough.
If you purchase that building, you wouldn't be kicking out people renters immediately. What would happen is, as people leave, you would put them in for low cost, put certain units in for low cost housing, wouldn't you? Transition them.
Well, that's one of the things we discussed, but that wouldn't alleviate the need now, because it would be a slow transition.
Yeah.
And what you still are doing, you still are taking affordable housing away from those people on the low end who can afford them. So you don't want to take away the low end market that people can afford to live in, that people who don't make a whole lot of money, but still you want those places to remain out there. What you do, if it's a high end place, maybe you could do that, where if the tenant leaves or whatever. But looks like the only alternative we did have was to build another place, and that's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, that's a huge cost. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. So but this is a debate that's been going on for years, and is not going to end anytime soon, right?
Yes, indeed. Anyway, what else we got?
Yep. Hasn't been passed. Yes to 50 states and need permit to be removed from the property. Okay.
50 Bill 50. Bad fail. It cost them, the landlord, a lot.
Yeah. In many instances,
great weekend, everyone. Okay, Mike, take it easy, brother.
Yeah. Most are built on the affordable, not RGI, with the COHB landlords will build. Yeah. Right.
Well, there's lots there.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm interested to see what happens with this one, right? I'm interested to see what happens. Yeah. Okay. So next we've got hospitalizations for respiratory illnesses are rising across Canada. And basically, this report is talking about this being disturbing.
Yes. Which the hospitalization rate has not gone down. Of course, it was spiked up during COVID times. And I mentioned here, when I was in the hospital getting my new knee, I was talking to a nurse, and she told me about wave 3 of COVID when it hit the hospital. The COVID patients were supposed to be sent, all of them were supposed to be sent to St. Catharines, but they ended up with 44 in the ICU, and they all died. And they were all people between the ages of 40 and 55, otherwise in good health. COVID is a very dangerous thing. Don't let anyone tell you it's just the flu. I had COVID, and it didn't bother me at all. My son got COVID, and he was in bed for 2.5 weeks, couldn't get out of bed. My a fellow Kiwanian I know, she was in bed for 3.5 weeks. Steady, just could not get out of bed, and it was retchingly tiring. So it depends on who you are. So it depends on who you are, old or not. Old people are, of course, more vulnerable. Those people who are overweight are more vulnerable. Those people who have diabetes are more vulnerable. But everybody is different, and it will affect everybody differently. My whole family, save one, got COVID, and it didn't bother them much at all, me included. But my one son He was out for 2.5 weeks in bed.
But basically,
it is a deadly thing. Do not dismiss it as just a flu. It could affect you in a very bad way. So
this is not just
article says
just COVID, though, Dave. It's just basically since COVID we've had a rise in respiratory illnesses.
Yes, but COVID is 40% of it. So we have had a rise in respiratory diseases, but COVID makes up 40% of that.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one is the RSV is the ordinary flu, and RSV viruses make up the other. Okay. Yeah. The real issue here is that in 2019, before COVID came along, we had 66 out of every 100,000 people that had to go to the hospital or be hospitalized. Now we have 142 people out of 100,000 being hospitalized. This is an incredible strain on the healthcare system. And these need not have happened if people go and get their vaccinations. That's what they've said. Well, I haven't gone and got any vaccinations since COVID, since, I don't know, I think the last one I had was 2022. Whatever it was, I had 5, right? And I had 5 rounds, and then after that, and I caught COVID, a mild case of COVID, and that was that. But this is a little bit different. You can avoid being sick at all if you get your vaccinations, and you can get a flu vaccination, COVID vaccination, an RSV one, and that will. They are saying that if more people did, there would be less strain on the hospital system.
But I'm going to agree with Rick on this one. I've never had a flu shot, never had flu.
Well, yeah, you're very, very lucky. You're very, very, very lucky. My mother too. She's never been sick. My mother was in Lundy Manor, where 20% of the people died. 20 out of 91 residents died. 75% of the people had to be hospitalized, and 20% died. So, but my mother didn't even get a sniffle. So she was right in among them, right? She's a very old lady.
But again,
young people were dying of it, and she was fine, you know.
It is disturbing that we've got a rise in respiratory illnesses, and just basically, you're right that irrespective of the cause, basically go get the doctor to have a look at it if you've got a problem.
Yeah, but the whole idea here is, if you have been susceptible, if you get colds and you get flus and you do those things, you're better off to go and get vaccinations. Normally, I never went and got vaccinations. Every once in a while, I did, because I could get off work. Like, for instance, when I was working at OPG, they would have the flu clinic, and so I could get off work for a couple hours while I sat in waiting for my vaccination, you know, so I could do something like that. So, but it didn't make a difference to me one way or another. But here in this particular case, if you have had any kind of health problem, if you are diabetic, if you are overweight, if you are older, especially, then go get this. If you have had problems, respiratory problems before, you can go get vaccines. You will help reduce because if you do get sick, you're going to likely end up in the hospital, which puts a terrible strain on our healthcare system.
Yeah. What
they're saying here is, if you get your vaccination, you're less likely to put a strain on the hospital system.
Yep. Okay. Absolutely. And moving on, the opening date for the Gordie Howe Bridge is being kind of one of these. Let's open it. We'll tell President Trump later that it's opened, right?
Good morning, Karen. Maybe it was okay. Yeah, so
what they're putting in the air.
So of course everything's going along fine. We're going to open this bridge, and all of a sudden, Dr. Donald Jesus Trump says, "Hey, you're not going to open it, right?" And everybody said, "Why? Why are we going to open it?" It turns out the guy that owns the Ambassador Bridge put a lot of money into his account during, during the election time, about $1 million. He come up with another $1 million, give it to Howard Lutnick. And Howard Lutnick is the one that went over to Trump and says, hey, look, we got this guy who's a contributor. Let's put some resistance on this bridge, for our buddy there. Howard Lutnick has since been completely out of the loop now because he was so humiliated by his involvement with Epstein and his lies about it. You haven't seen him since the Congress talked to him about it and revealed in the Epstein files, he's all over it, messing around with Epstein on Epstein Island and everything, after he said he hated the guy and met him once and that's all. So Lutnick is being pushed to the side. So Lutnick's not a factor here, but he's the one that initiated this. The owner of the Ambassador Bridge went to Lutnick, handed him some money and say, do something for me. And of course, Lutnick went over to Dr. Donald Jesus Trump and said, look, our buddy here give us money. So you got to do some ranting and raving. Okay. Do some ranting and raving and make some nonsensical noise about Canada owning both sides of the river.
Yeah. So in the last week, a certain politician has become a doctor. He's become the almighty, and he's become, well, goodness knows what else. That's some change around for normal people.
I'm waiting for the miracle of the Straits of Hormuz opening up when he blockaded it. I will blockade the Straits of Hormuz, and by a miracle, they will open up. Well, how do you do that? Anyway, we'll see. I think he's going to escalate. I feel sorry for the Iranian people. I think a lot more of them are going to die pretty soon, and I hope not too many American soldiers are. But what's looks like massive escalation because Trump can't find a way out of this. Netanyahu's got him hooked in good. And Bibi's doing anything he wants to do, slaughtering people in Lebanon, slaughtering Iranians. He's just having a gay all time. And Trump's trying to get himself out of this war that's costing billions of dollars. Like I said before, it costs $600 billion to save two guys out of an aircraft. The United States and lost more aircraft than they have since World War II in that operation at one time.
Yeah, well, it would be a good thing for both. It would be a good thing for both the United Arab Emirates and Oman to build a nice little channel from Abu Dhabi to Sohar. They can build a canal there. It's a nice straight canal, so they don't have to take the boats, move the boats in one direction, then move the boats in the other direction. Nice straight canal across there. That'll work.
Yeah, well, it's still within bombing distance. That won't work. It's still within bombing missile distance. But let's talk about Gordie Howe Bridge.
Yeah.
He's trying to block the Straits of Gordie here. But what they're trying to do is trying to keep the opening really quiet, because if they go ahead and just do it quietly, he might not notice, and he won't rage and froth at the mouth and say dumb stuff about it, like Canada's trying to own Michigan and idiotic things like that. Of course, he just lies. He just lies. Everything. I don't know why he just keeps lying like that. It's gonna the party faithful knows it, but are putting up with it because he has the power of the electorate. He knows how to get his biggest voting base are lesser educated white people, white people that have not gone to college. That's his biggest base. But even they're going to wake up. I mean, they can blindly follow him, but every once in a while they're going to think, oh, who is this Jesus guy now? And you see the recent picture of him when he's with Jesus, Jesus with him in the picture. So it's Trump and Jesus, but it looks more like a homeless guy. So it's like Trump with a homeless guy. And I don't know.
Yeah, but you know what's going to happen? Of course, they've got to open this bridge fairly soon. It's expected. It's it's right on the cusp of being ready. I think it's May that it's all finished and everything. But they're going to just open it without ceremony, aren't they?
Well, the best way to open it is put a big statue of Trump there on it, and call it the How Trump Bridge. If you do that, it'll open tomorrow. Especially with he has a statue of himself there.
Which
something like that, and it will, and he'll accelerate the opening of it. But right now, it's the money from the guy who owns the Ambassador Bridge. He's the guy that's feeding Lutnick money, and he's feeding Trump money, and that's why Trump just made nonsense noise about it. But the problem is, the sycophants in the Republican Party will just keep. It doesn't matter to them how beneficial the bridge will be for the U.S. economy. They found that a problem of that in Iowa, I guess. The Trump's policies there were hurting the Iowans really bad, but the Republican congressmen and senators were afraid to say anything about it, and the economy just started tanking. But they couldn't say anything about it because was Trump's ideas. So I don't know what's going to happen. They got to get this guy is going to go pretty soon. It's going to be Article 25 or Amendment 25 or something, or impeachment or something. But the Republicans cannot put up with a guy every day that thinks he's Jesus.
At this moment, the opening date for the bridge depends upon the completion of ongoing quality reviews and testing and commissioning activities. But essentially, the bridge is complete now, and other than the final testing.
Yeah, it's just nonsensical that they built a complete bridge, and when it's done, Trump starts lying about it. He says that you owe us a lot more money. You didn't use any American labor. Well, yeah, they did. 25% of the material comes from the United States, and Canada paid for it. Yeah. And of course, the workers on the U.S. side, a lot of the iron workers. Remember, this is international unions anyway, right?
Of course.
So the iron workers and the pile drivers, everybody else that's involved in this are part of international unions. And there were American workers as well as Canadian workers on it.
And typically, of course, those that did the American side of the bridge would have been American labor largely, and those that did the Canadian side of the bridge would have been like
the whole plaza was all American concrete and steel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so he lies about it, but he lies about it. He says, "Oh, Canada did this. Canada owns our side of the border. We can't let this happen. We can't let Canada own it and control people going in and out of the United States."
Yeah,
like how is that going to happen? But he just says stuff like that, scares everybody.
Yeah,
and even people that know that he's lying won't say nothing about it.
Yeah. All right.
Especially the Republican Congress. God, what a bunch of wimpies. Okay, Gary. I'm gonna wear my flower shirt. My shirt that you're jealous of. That's what I'll wear. Yes. Put a Trump 2028 and do the Iranian version of that, which is Trump 2028, oil prices or gasoline prices $20.28 a liter or a gallon, pardon me. Have you seen that one? The Iranian version.
I haven't seen.
There's this thing going. There's this campaign thing going. Trump 2028, right? And for president, and so the Iranians have just changed that. They put Trump $20.28 per gallon.
Yeah. Okay. So Rick is saying there's no hurry to open it. And Gary's saying that he makes you smile. You make him smile. There we go. All right. Well, that's what we're here for, maybe.
All right. Yeah. There's some facts interweaved with comedy.
Yeah. Okay, and moving on. So attendance at schools in Ontario has been declining. Right, and this is disturbing. It's both high school and elementary school, and attendance is plummeting. High schoolers are going at 40% of high schoolers and 55% of elementary school students met the attendance standards in 2024. So, whoa.
I think before we talk about that, we should just mention, and then this is not going to be any big surprise to anyone there, but one of the articles there saying that 60% of the people in Niagara do not want the province to.
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to get that. Okay,
we'll get to that one. It's next. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch the high school, the school attendance thing, before we got onto that particular one.
Yeah. So what is that?
Yeah.
There's mandated attendance, make it account for 10 to 15% of high schoolers' final marks. A move that is drawing mixed reaction.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody has to come to school. I knew a guy that never came to school. He only came to school for tests. Everybody told him what assignments were ready and all that, and he would never come to school. And I remember he was in my Russian history class, and he was never there. And somebody would say, "Okay, we have an assignment." And so we would tell him what the assignment is, and he'd write up the assignment and give it to somebody. Somebody would come to school and give it to the teacher, and he would always get top marks on it. When we had an exam, he'd show up for that day. He'd show up for that day, write the exam, ace it, and then we wouldn't see him again anymore.
Yeah.
So there's some people, and then when he came to the end of the year, they said he couldn't graduate because he didn't attend enough days at school. And meanwhile, his marks are, really,
that was
really
exactly my brother. That was exactly my brother. We were describing who is my brother. He hardly went when he got through junior school. He went to secondary school and he figured out, he doesn't really have to attend. He'd actually attend. Get checked in as get checked in as attending, then disappear, and he'd always get straight A's across the board, absolutely everything. Never failed a test at all, but was never seen at school anywhere.
Yeah. So some people, they're very rare, don't really have to go.
Me, I had to slog my guts out.
They pretty well self-taught.
Yeah.
But the most of us do. And it's a good thing for us to go to school anyway, just for the social interaction, particularly at a time when there's an isolationist type of thing going on, where more and more people are buried in their basements in front of their computers or phones and never come out. And that particularly is the case with young people, as we've pointed out on the show over and over again. And he says 40%. Our commenter there, was it Rick who said that? 40%? Yeah. So what is going on?
You're correct, Rick. There is homeschooling, but homeschool students are not included in these statistics because they will have their own attendance records kept.
They're mostly religious people anyway.
Yeah.
They want to keep kids away from corrupting education, that kind of thing.
Just wanted to throw that one out there. All right, let's go to the real meat of for before we leave, which is that two-thirds of Niagarans don't want to see forced amalgamation.
Yes. Does this surprise anyone?
No.
All right. For one thing, what is change? What does change bring? What does the suggestion of change bring?
Change
it brings
always
fear.
Brings fear,
doesn't it?
Right? Always.
The suggestion of change brings fear.
Yeah.
However, the only thing that changes is change. Like the only thing that doesn't change is change. You have to have change.
Yeah.
If we were in the same political situation we are in 1600, we'd have people with heads spiked on spikes or pikes on them around the countryside to bring us into order, under the king or whatever.
Yeah.
So we have evolved.
Yeah.
Do we evolve again? Now, this whole process of amalgamation that's happened here is nothing new. Everybody's acting as if it is something new. This has been something suggested many, many times over the past, and yet we really haven't done much about it. Now what they're saying is, well, okay, we'll do something. We'll reduce the amount of politicians we have. Well, that was one point they made, that we have a lot of politicians in this area, and each particular municipality is vowing to reduce the amount of politicians it has. But that's not the real issue, is it? The real issue is that our government is incredibly costly.
Mm-hmm.
What is that a result of? Partly as a result of inflation, partly it is a result of trading lanes and material costs and all that other stuff associated with the city anyway, with anything. So some of that is applied there, but a lot of it is suggested that it's due to inefficiencies.
Yeah.
Right. Why do we have such high increases at the region?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me why. Well, you can trim down the regional government and get rid of some of the politicians. That would help, maybe. Amalgamating things.
No, I don't know.
Would that really help?
I don't know that necessarily trimming down the politicians does help. Arguably, if you spend 6 months arguing about a particular project, that delays the project. And I don't disagree with you, but sometimes it's actually, I always find that it's project management misuse within the public sector that often causes massive price increases. For example, the center that we built, the new arts center that we built.
Oh, the exchange?
The exchange, yes, the exchange. The original cost for that was $7 million. The end cost for that was $17 million.
And does anyone use it?
And it's that's a different question. That's a different question entirely. But where it became a problem is suddenly because nobody has budget management and accountability sense in there. And, it's just public money. We can spend it willy-nilly. No, we cannot. We've got to stop that.
Well,
overspending is a nightmare.
Well, how is amalgamation going to help that?
No, amalgamation doesn't have any impact upon that because that's just basically bureaucratic inefficiency. And it's nothing to do with amalgamation. In fact, amalgamation arguably makes it worse.
You see, Rick here is suggesting that 4 is the sweet spot, that 1 would be too big to manage, but 4 would be the sweet spot. I guess if you had one municipal government, it would be one giant regional government that may not be any more efficient than it is right now.
Yeah.
So, but the 12 we have is probably very inefficient. Amalgamating to 4. I don't know. I have to. There was all kinds of studies and all kinds of things we were reading. Some endorsed it. Some said it wasn't going to be any good. And there's all kinds of, and of course, there's the constant forever, another study, another study, another study.
Yeah, yeah.
But
studies
actually speaking, if somebody can analyze for me how we were going to make, how those efficiencies are going to help us, I don't know. Can we do those efficiencies? Are they going to make a difference? Something's wrong, though. Something is definitely wrong. The region costs way too much. Tax increases are wrong. So what different municipalities have done, we see them examining what they're doing and what they're doing interacting with the region, and have suggested reforms of one kind or another. Yeah. And oddly enough, you would have thought these reforms would have been pursued at an earlier time. But it's only because Bob Gale brought it up and he put lit a fire on everybody. They're actually talking about improving governance in the region. So you might disagree with me, but I tip my hat to Bob for starting the conversation and forcing the conversation to be said, rather than, oh, well, we hear you, we're going to put it for another study, that kind of thing. And
okay, basically, what Gary was saying is, what about the $50 million that was sent misspent on the eyesore of the Burgoyne Bridge in St. Catharines? Yeah,
I'd like to know more about that. I don't. That's a good point, Gary. I mean, and here's Karen Fraser. Jim said that they amalgamated the snow plowing. The region would save $14 million. Well, there's different suggestions there. Some people say that the Niagara Falls should do all its own plowing, particularly regional roads, because they can do it faster than the region does.
Yeah. Well, in fact, actually, if you think about this, you've got a regional road, and you run the snowplow route up the regional road, down the other road, up and down the road. In fact, the regional road is going to get plowed at the same time as the rest of the roads, and you go in and out and in and out and in and out as you're going through that whole regional road. So snow plowing could be more efficient.
I don't know. That's one thing. I
agree with you, Gary. I do agree with you,
King Jim. Well, of course, Jim and the other mayors, the main mayors, Cisco and Campion and Jim, are very much in favor of amalgamation. The CEO, the CAO, Burgess, I don't know how he sees it. I think he would see pluses and minuses like anyone else who's good at analyzing.
Somebody like Burgess will lose his job.
I don't think that guy's going to lose his job anywhere. He seems to be pretty good at what he does, and there's a dearth of good planners out there in Ontario. So if he's not going to get his job here, he'll get a job somewhere else.
Well, yeah, okay. So when I said he lose his job, I mean the job of CAO will disappear from Niagara Falls if it becomes amalgamated.
I think they would still need the CAOs. Like, your department's going to be much, much bigger if you amalgamate. You know what I mean? So
if we amalgamate,
your departments are going to be huge.
Let's take this crazy situation, right? So now Niagara Falls amalgamates with Niagara on the Lake, right? That's always been open to possibility. Hey, Niagara Falls, the once capital of Canada.
Yeah. Well,
what a lie that one is, eh? What a great lie that one is.
Well, yeah, but the biggest issue here is they would more likely amalgamate with St. Catharines anyway.
It would have more logic to actually amalgamating. Absolutely. If you're going to amalgamate Niagara on the Lake, the Niagara on the Lake to St. Catharines link would be much more sensible. And in fact, actually, for example, Thorold as a city. Everything east of the canal should come to Niagara Falls. Everything west of the canal should merge into St. Catharines.
We got to get rid of Welland somehow.
Well, and
maybe we can give we'll trade Welland to Haldimand County, right? And we'll get something neat for it. I don't know.
Actually, here's the thing: you change the name of Welland because you merge Welland with Thorold South. Therefore, Welland becomes Thorold South. How about that? That's a nonsense one. I'm not really seriously.
It sounds Orwellian to me.
I was just saying yesterday, Dave, as we're talking about this, I was just saying to my Wellanders at work how you were talking about anchovy pizza being the main dish of Welland.
Yeah, it's about the only place in the world you'd ever be able to find.
They didn't deny it.
What?
Yeah, they didn't, and my Wellanders didn't deny it.
Yeah, I know. They're a different bunch over there. That's why I say we could trade them. Maybe we can sort of foist them off over to Haldimand County and get something neat back for it. Maybe we can get porked over or something. Anyway,
Yeah.
but basically, if you're going to join Thorold and Welland, it would be Thorwellian. I'll repeat my joke.
Orwellian. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And I think on that note, Dave, we must call it a day.
Must call it a day, but I will like to leave this question for our listeners. There is a lot of a lot of talk about what's been happening in Iran and the Middle East. A lot of it has to do with religion, and we're always kind of zeroing in on the Shias of Iran and the Sunnis of Hamas and so on and so forth. But I think this is a much more religious thing going on. We often no one talks about the religious zealotry of the settlers in the West Bank and in Gaza. These people are extremely religious weirdos, and like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, they are Kahani type weirdos. Kahani was a super right wing settler that was assassinated once.
Yeah. Okay.
And his movement's still going on. And I would like to point out what's happening in the States right now, as you see that Dr. Donald Jesus Trump is associating himself with religion right now, with Jesus. They have the Zionists, the Christian Zionists. This is a Christian movement, sticking their nose into the politics and trying to enhance Israel, because they think that if once all the Jews return to Israel, that the end of days are coming, and they're just like over the moon. Oh, good, the world's going to end, and God's going to come down, and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of weirdo religious stuff happening, not just in the Middle East, not just among the Shia and Sunni Muslims. It's happening with the Christian Zionists and the fundamentalists in the United States. It's happening with the Jewish population, their Hasbara thing, and their settler movement is brutally cruel and zealot. It is nut bars all over the place, all religious nut bars.
Oh yeah.
So I leave that with the audience. What do you think? And then,
and in fact, actually, I'd also start to say that we've got religious nut bars of all varieties of religion. We've got them in, Sunni nut bars, Shia nut bars, Christian nut bars, Catholic nut bars,
Jewish
nut bars, the whole works. And that's an interesting thought. So
I propose that we make nut bars illegal.
And let us, okay. And Dave, that's an interesting thought. And Dave, yes, time to sort this out.
I will say goodbye, but don't forget Gaza. The misery is happening constantly there. They're still bombing it, still killing kids in Gaza. Keep that in mind. That country, Israel, that did that to Gaza, is supposed to be a democratic Western country. It is a brutal terrorist country, in my view. And that has to change. And we can do it here by depriving Israel of money that it needs to do that bombing. And so we can get back to normal. Anyway, I don't think that might be a lot of work. But anyway, without further ado, I bid you adieu and pray for peace.
Yeah.